Hi, everybody. So we're pretty much at the end of the first week of GARBAUGUST. And, okay, so as I said, I was going to spend each week kind of working on two books that I'd chosen for the theme, and then extra credit trying to check off some of the bingo cards. So the first book that I chose for the bingo card would be Chances by Jackie Collins. Now, as I said, I have never heard the expression bonkbuster before recently, but it's a pretty apt term, actually, because it's a big, multi-generational, multi-decade, sprawling story with lots and lots of sex. Fantastic read, and it is so much fun. So much fun. So I'm going to give it 2 trash canisters. I don't know, well, trash cans, I guess we'll call them. So 2 trash cans because, one, it's really well written, fantastic pace, lots of great characters, really good read. But it is considered trash. And, I mean, it's Jackie Collins, right? There's a lot of sleaze, there's a lot of backstabbing, there's a lot of what have you. And I'm sure critics absolutely hate it, but Chances is a really fun read. I first read it. I've been trying to figure out when exactly it was because I read Lucky, which was the second book in the series, first. And we had that one on paperback, and the paperbacks in the 80s usually came out 6 months to a year after the initial publication of the hardback. And the hardback came out in 1985. So I would have read it any time between 86 and 88 or 89. I mean, it could have been any time in there. I really don't remember exactly when I read it. But I read Lucky first, and then my sister had read Chances. So then I went, and she told me how good it was, and then I went back and I read Chances. So yeah, so I read it at some point in the ages between 12 and 14. I read a lot of Jackie Collins back then, so I read Hollywood Wives, Hollywood Husbands, all those books. And then later when Lady Boss came out, I read that one too. Not that it really matters. I'm just trying to pinpoint it for my memory, but I don't know. My memory's pretty bad. My memory's always been terrible. But anyway, Chances is the story. The main character is Gino Santangelo. He was born in 1905 or 1906. The math says 1906, but the later books say 1905, so whatever. When we first meet him, he's a teenager. He's a petty criminal. He's kind of running around the streets of New York getting into trouble because his dad's a piece of shit, and his mother just kind of up and leaves one day because she gets tired of him. And he starts working on cars. He starts, and then he figures out that stealing cars is more lucrative, and all he wants in the world is just to make money and make money and make money. So after a stint in jail, juvie, he starts getting involved with the prohibition gangs. One of the really fun things about Jackie Collins is that she does drop in some historical names. So she sets Gino up to be kind of part of the Lucky Luciano gang in New York in the 20s. And Gino builds his fortune on that. Eventually he meets a senator, learns how to invest his money, launder it, make it legit. And then eventually in the 40s, he does what gangsters did in those days and invests in some hotels. And then he starts, going off into other areas. And in the meantime, his daughter, Lucky, becomes the sort of main protagonist of the second half of the book. And we see her grow up from a wayward teenager into pretty much a carbon copy of her dad. She's very strong, she's very smart, she's got the business savvy, and she takes over when Gino goes into exile. And the book is the framing story is set against the New York City blackout in 1977. So we see what all the characters are doing in what's the modern day of 1977. And then we see the characters' lives through flashback that brings them all up together. And that's another thing that I really like about Jackie Collins is the way that, it's really well paced and it's really well constructed as a story. And that's that takes some skill. Like, not everybody can do that. Speaking of not everybody can do that, I remembered that her sister Joan Collins also wrote a novel. And I figured out that her sister Joan wrote 4 or 5 novels. So I went and I actually, my first DNR of the, of GARBAUGUST of the month. And this one was a book by Joan Collins. And the title of it was the Saint-Tropez Lonely Hearts Club. I'm about 45 pages into it, and I just don't think I'm going to finish. It's not very good. It's not, like, the characters aren't really set up, and she has this really irritating way of going back and forth between third person and first person. So she'll set something up in the third person, and then she'll write about it as if she's in the character's head, and then she'll go back to third person and pretty much explain what we just read. It's confusing, and it just doesn't add anything to the story. So no, I'm not enjoying it. So I may finish it at some point in the month and give you my review, but for the most, I'm probably just not going to finish it. So, and the other thing that is really fun about the San Angelo series is that there are actually 10 books in the series. And, Netflix, if you're listening, I think that the San Angelos would make a fantastic TV show. I mean, you've got history, you've got so much drama, you've got backstabbing and violence and gangsters and hotels and beautiful rich people and celebrities and models, and you've got everything. Like, it's just a really, really, really tons of characters, tons of intrigue and drama. And they can make a fantastic series, but what do I know? But although the other thing about Saint-Tropez Lonely Hearts Club is that it was dedicated to Jackie Collins, who passed away in 2015. Sadly, she apparently was battling breast cancer for a lot of years, and it was really sudden, for her fans that she passed away. But I guess she'd been sick for some time, and she just was very silent about it. And it's unfortunate because now we're never going to get any more Jackie Collins novels, and I'm so sad. But anyway, Chances, and it was made into a really not good, really, really not good miniseries in 1990, which combined the story of Chances and Lucky, and it was called Lucky Chances, which is just a terrible title. Terrible title. But I remember watching it and thinking, what is this crap? What is this utter crap? It was such a good book, and you did this to it. I mean, Sandra Bullock is Maria? No. Shawnee Smith is Olympia? No. Just, no, terrible casting. Terrible job with the book, or with the miniseries. All the more reason that it needs to be an actual series, TV series, Netflix series, streaming series, whatever. Prime, anybody? All right. I've been talking and talking because I'm trying to put off. I read my first shifter romance. Now, I thought this was a book because it was 80 pages, but it's actually only a short story, so I don't even know if it counts. But I'm going to count it because it's GARBAUGUST, and I don't intend to ever read a shifter romance again because this was awful, but it was also kind of hilarious. I mean, so hilarious that I'm almost considering doing another dramatic reading. So the book that I chose, Pleasured by the Panther by Celia Stiles. Okay, so it's about a young woman who goes home, and as with apparently most shifter romances, I don't know why the writers of these things can't make their characters interact like actual people. But she starts talking to her stepbrother, whose name is Felix. Nothing significant about that name, no. And he calls her Squirt, because apparently somebody told the story that she is a squirter. And she calls him Banana, because apparently that's what he did with a girl one time. I mean, who does that? No. not with your family members either. Like, ew. And so then they go on and on about each other's bodies, and she looks up in the mirror that she had on her ceiling. Like, what teenage girl has a mirror on her ceiling? Like, ew. I can tell you, no teenage girl is going to be comfortable enough to want to be looking at herself while she's sleeping. No. Ew. So anyway, she goes out, she follows him at night when he goes for a walk in the woods, and finds out that he shifts into a panther because a panther bit him at some point. Oh my. Okay, so here's the exchange. Let me guess, you lost a bet, so now you have to walk through a forest naked, I asked. Felix shook his head. Not even close. I don't do bets, sis. Okay, that's another question I have. I've seen it on shows. Does anybody ever actually call their sibling sis? Okay, I live with my sister, and we call each other all kinds of things, but I have never in my life called my sister sis. Anyway, then what is it? I asked. I'll bite. Shortly after you left for college, a panther attacked and bit me. I was returning home from a bonfire when one jumped at me. It pinned me to the ground and sunk its teeth into my arm. He extended his right arm to show me. Sure enough, there was a sizable scar near his shoulder. Wait, how come my parents never told me this? I thought that would be an emergency, I said. I patched myself up on my own, that's why, Felix replied. Is this one of your bullshit stories? Panthers don't live around here, and there isn't a nearby zoo where one could escape from. Knowing you probably got that scar while being a little too drunk. Felix shook his head. No, I'm serious. After that, something happened that I can't explain. During certain nights, I become a panther. So then he talks about his transformation, and then my transformation is slow. I start growing fangs, and that's when I know that I'm going to turn, he continued. If you wanted to see them, then go ahead. I approached him knowing he was probably about to pull the dumbest prank on me. As I faced him, I shined my light into his face. Felix flashed his teeth, and sure enough, there were fangs in there. They looked quite realistic, so if they were fake, then they were high quality and not some cheap crap you get at a Halloween store. Touch them and you'll see that they're real, Felix invited. Why would I touch your teeth? I asked him rhetorically. I reached out and grabbed one of his fangs, giving it a light pull. The tooth didn't budge, and it felt just like a real one. Maybe he used some kind of cement to seal them. See, I'm not lying, he told me. I'll transform in the next hour or so. The symptoms are about to come. What are the symptoms? I asked. I feel hornier than usual, he told me, a stern look still on his face. I laughed. That's always you, though. I feel an animal-like urge to have sex with anything I see. I feel like a beast who needs to be satisfied. So then they get in this discussion about the fact that they're not actually, related, which apparently is some kind of thing that the author has, because there's another story in this, which is a shapeshifter with a stepbrother and something to do with horses that I just couldn't be bothered to read. I'm going to write an anti-romance called The Westermark Effect, and they're going to be siblings that actually behave like siblings and can't stand each other, so. And then this particular gem, this one is the funniest. I nearly died when I read this. Felix, I shouted, my words escaping me, almost out of instinct. His hands reached for my pants, and he pulled them all the way down with one swift movement. He stared at my black thong that I wore, and I felt my cheeks redden. My brain screamed, get away! But my womanhood yelled, let him in! And you know what? I'm seriously going to maybe not seriously, but I'm seriously considering doing a dramatic reading, and that is the voice that I'm going to use for her vagina. Yeah! So anyway, they have lots and lots and lots of sex, and then they decide to stay together when she goes back to school, and that's the end of it. We don't... I don't understand it. I mean, it's a lot of fucking. It's a lot of unnatural, unlikely fucking. Nobody gets dehydrated. Nobody gets a cramp or farts. I don't know. But I guess that's the fantasy of it. I don't know. So anyway, that would be my first shifter romance, Pleasured by the Panther, a paranormal shapeshifter romance. And the author's name is, I've forgotten, and I think this is a fake author. I really do. I think it's some dude who's never had sex or hasn't had sex in a long time. Oh, Celia Stiles is the name of the author. So 4 out of 5 trash cans for that story. It's terrible. It's badly written. It's badly badly edited. The verb tenses are all over the place. The characters are awful. And of course, I mean, like, we really just read it to get to the fucking, right? I mean, that's what this stuff is supposed to be about. But even the fucking really isn't that interesting. But yes, although the unexpectedly hilarious womanhood screaming, "Let him in!" probably did, knock a trash can off for me. So that's GARBAUGUST, Sex and Violence for week number 1. Extra credit bingo card for a bonk buster, being a dirty book, and a shapeshifter romance. Chances by Jackie Collins, which I do recommend if you just like a really fun read and you just want like a nice summer beach read. Jackie Collins is always gonna deliver. She's great. And then this awful, terrible Pleasured by the Panther by Celia Stiles. Hope you're reading lots of great horror, great books, great garbage. Have a great day.